G'day. I'd love to talk to you today about elation and depression. What a lot of people don't realize is that they are two peas in the same pod. If you look at the growth of a tree, you'll notice that it grows in all directions. It doesn't grow in one direction. Whereas a person who thinks that elation is fantastic, which is the search for happiness, doesn't realize that at the top of the mountain there's sadness. That actually for every elation there's a depression, for every infatuation there's a resentment, for every attraction there's a repulsion. And this is why some people struggle to stay in jobs or struggle to stay in relationships, is that they want half stories. We need to stop that. If you're having emotional trouble, the way to stop it, firstly you can be Zen, which is in a sense have no emotion. And there's another way. The other way is to live your life fully with 7 areas of life, 7 representations of what you want on the outside, and yet on the inside recognize that wherever your emotions take you, if they take you to pleasure, they're also going to swing back to pain. Sort of like a little monkey in your brain swinging you back between I want it, I don't want it, I want it, I don't want it. And if you recognize that, it makes life easier. A baby is born with emotion. You can't say that it's happy all the time. You can't say that it's sad all the time. It doesn't usually seek extremes of either. It just cries when it needs to. But an adult starts to think about the world and starts to think of good news and bad news. It wants to balance work and life, but it wants to be elated at work and elated at home and elated in all areas of life. And so all of a sudden these emotions are swinging backwards and forwards, the person's trying to hold the bubble from bursting, trying to stay elated, stay happy, stay fulfilled, stay up. And there's so much programming around that teaches us that this is possible, but it's not. You've seen the diagram where we talk about lower consciousness. This person will go to incredible extremes to be all elated and therefore try and avoid depression. But doesn't work. So I think the best solution to this, if you're talking about elation depression, is to go to nature. Nature has all the answers to these questions. When you see a tree in nature, you see what's above the ground, but you know there's roots underneath it. It's exactly the same thing as when you meet somebody in a relationship. You say, oh, I love you, you're perfect, and now I think I'd like you to change, which means after a short period of time, the roots of the tree start to reveal themselves. The soul always knows what to do to heal itself, but the challenge is to silence the mind, because the mind is always seeking an upper without a downer, a pleasure without a pain, a right without a wrong, which is illusion. So I'm offering you the suggestion, a nature-based suggestion, that instead of saying I want to have an upper emotion and I want to get rid of my downer emotions, to focus on something a little higher, to focus on inspiration over motivation. Motivation's the outside, inspiration's the inside. This is an evolve or die strategy. People with depression don't last very long, and we know that. Sometimes the easiest way to solve a problem is to stop participating in the problem, and the problem is the way we think. Silence is the best reply to a fool, and sometimes we're the fool we're replying to. So I think the laws of nature, the laws of physics, are the solution to elation and depression. We see the world go round. We know that on one side of the planet something's good happening. We know that on the other side of the planet something's bad happening. We know that on one side of the planet something's growing, something's dying. We know that on one side of the planet there's a high tide, on the other side there's low tide. On one side of the planet it's light, the other side of the planet is dark. And that's a great metaphor for your mind. So to be inspired, see the balance, look for inspiration over motivation, and rather than to seek happiness, pleasure, and avoiding pain and discomfort, try to look for the universal laws in your thinking, and that will raise you up above elations and depressions. And it's much as it sounds like it will be less happiness or less pleasure or less joy. It's a far more inspired place, a far more heart-filled, soul-driven, inspired place to come from, where love becomes the single greatest aspiration rather than happiness, which is a delusion. This is Chris Walker. Have a great day.